just talk about your journey with dogs and where do you think that passion got a hold of you?
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Man, well, American Bulldogs, excuse me, is my favorite breed of dogs, obviously, right? But man, it probably dogs in general goes back to when I mean, little kid. We had always had like a pet around or dogs, and we had some crazy little terriers that would climb up like the walls, and no matter what, they would get out. They were like cats, and they were cool, but I always wanted like a big dog and stuff. But my parents always let me have dogs. Nothing inside. Now we have dogs and they're inside more or less, right? But never could have dogs inside. But I think probably when the movie Homeward Bound.
Yeah.
So obviously, the Homeward Bound. There's American Bulldog in there. I think the original one was a Bull Terrier. Um, the first rendition of it, right? Which is also a cool dog. I tried to get one of those. I brought it home. My mom said it was ugly and take it somewhere else. But um, so I saw that movie. I really liked the dogs. I always wanted one. American Bulldog. I want American Bulldog. They weren't really. I mean, the internet was barely like coming up. So it wasn't, and people weren't like advertising on there. But I remember just some people like old school people that were doing that, like Bibees. I remember seeing dogs and some other dogs, but they were like far, maybe in the south or other places. They were utilizing them for what they were meant to do, right? And they were hunting and hogs and stuff like that, which is cool. And I would look at the same websites, and they're nothing compared to now. There's no Instagram, so it was a little bit slower. Books, my cousin, rest in peace. He was had a passion, for dogs too. So he was just into dogs. So he would always show me some stuff. We had like dog books all over the place. And he had like a mentor that was into dogs. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Mark Riesinger, he did the Embolneo Mastiff.
Yeah.
He actually just passed away recently. So shout
Yeah.
out to Mark and his family, man. Rest in peace,
Yeah. Most
Mark.
definitely.
But yeah, so that was his mentor, and I remember, he would take me to his ranch, and we would see the dogs, and I mean, there was just so many breeds of dogs, bull mastiffs, and pit bulls, and American bulldogs, and just dogs. Now maybe in the dog area, so I see them and I know them, but I mean that was 20 years ago, more than that. So the dogs weren't around like that. Those were like, super exotic. Like, where would you get that? Neapolitan mastiffs and crosses now that probably the American bully style, right? But that was, they were doing some crazy crosses and like some real game bred dogs, and just it was amazing like to see that, right? And I was a little kid, like all fired up. And I was like, that's the dog I want. I seen American Bulldog, like that's the one I want, that's the one I want. And I, kicked and screamed, and I didn't get one. Obviously, they're expensive back then. That was $1,500. That was 20 years ago, right? So that's a lot of money. And we're trying to find one, and I found one. I was like, oh, not yet. Mom was like, no, you're not gonna get that. A family friend brought home this. My cousin, they'll call it like a whodunit. It was just like, we don't know what kind of breed of dog it was. It looked like a big deer. And my mom was like, oh yeah, just keep this dog. And I was like, yeah, this is not the dog I want. And that dog lived for like 20 years. And but in the meantime, we were looking at other dogs, and I finally got American Bulldog. I got it from Mark actually. And I think probably the origins of that dog was maybe like an older kennel, like some, what is it, like True Grip, something like, just old. That was a long time ago, right? So that's where they came from. And I finally got it, and I got my American Bulldog. I was like, maybe third. I was in middle school, maybe like 13, 14. Oh man, and I fell in love with it. Then we would just bring dogs home, more dogs, and between the two of us, we would bring dogs and dog books and read on stuff. And um, I just got another one. And then, as time goes on and I moved out and I had kids and I got another one. But we always had at least one, like American Bulldog. I was like, one day where, I'll be able to like do this, like, real or like full time, or like, kind of just not just get a dog and keep it, right? I want to make something to know what I like. And we had a couple, so we knew like what we didn't like. Um, and then my fiance, I met her now, and she loves dogs. We got our first one. We actually snuck it into her mom's house, and she was like, "What the heck?" So we snuck it over there. She ended up keeping that dog. We moved out, and that dog lived. It just recently passed away. It was like, I don't know, maybe like 15 years old, right? So she had that, and then her mom was like, "Oh my god!" And so now, we just got everybody we know into, American Bulldogs, love them. I was like, man, you guys are lucky. It's like a dream come true. Have puppies, like, and dogs like all the time, or your parents be passionate about, the dogs. But I think we kind of went like got a little serious, maybe like in 2020, right? 2019. I think we got our first one where we're like, hey, I want to do something, and this is kind of the start of, something. So we did some more research on, like the all the lines, and maybe some dogs that were like up to date, and more recent and kind of around. I had been following people, on the internet, and kind of, just talking and looking and stuff. And then, I mean, man, fast forward to now, I think currently we own like five. Um, and we have some other dogs, here and there. But yeah, we've had a few litters since then. But man, that those dogs are awesome. I always wanted a dog that could, pet or like play in the water, um, and just look cool. And these dogs are that. We have, small kids, and they're good with them. But they're just a fun dog. I mean, I would recommend that. Some people say maybe like intermediate, or like it's not for beginners, but I think a beginner, if you have a nice dog from maybe a good breeder, that could be maybe somebody's first dog, and even in like an apartment, you're um, exercising them, right? I think it's a great dog for people or by themselves. The puppies that we have, I mean, they've gone to like all kinds of different like walks of lives, and they excel. So it's a pretty cool, breed. But I definitely wouldn't change them. If I had more yard, I would probably get other dogs, breeds too, because there's some other cool dogs out there. But the American Bulldog is definitely the one for me.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the things that when you do breed and in your program and you're looking at the near future, what are some of the qualities that you're trying to really put to the forefront with your program, with the American Bulldog? We know the certain variations, the rudimentary, the layman mind goes to, the Johnson Scott type, but we really that's kind of starting to go away. We kind of look at it the performance versus the bully type. What is for you? What is your focus? And then talk about the overall picture of the style that you like and the temperament and what that looks like for your yard.
Yeah, definitely. For us, I think, temperament is. I know a lot of people will say that, but it's a good, it's a good thing. Temperament, and just because in the like where we're at, right, in suburban area, and we have, family and children, we like to host. So I think, temperament is a real, focus for our program. Um, our dogs, they do have drive. We've done some, stuff where they do, they have some good drive. They breathe well. They also show, if you've seen, we do take our dogs to shows, for the confirmation part. But the overall like temperament, right? I like, yeah, like you said, some people say, right, that's basic, like, oh, Johnson or the Scott. Now people say more like our hybrid, right? Um, I guess in our program, they would probably fall maybe in like a hybrid type, body style. But yeah, because they're still, fit, in athletic, they can still move, but they're also on the larger side. And they do, we want the bone and the head, right? Good structure. But health, I think, is important because I mean, right? You've had dogs, you've lost dogs. You said your dog was 11, right? One of them. So we want like, health and longevity, especially if someone's going to purchase a puppy, or if we're going to, give somebody, or we're going to, get a puppy, I would want it to be around for a long time, because it's important, and they're parts of your family, my family. I mean, people take them on vacation with them. They do Christmas cards. So yeah, health, because I mean that's a shame, right? You get a dog, you invest, and everybody's excited, and then they get sick in a year, 2 years, and then you gotta very old Brutus. You don't want to do that. But I like where we're going. I think it's a dog for everybody, that we can have and enjoy, just to be, and they're able to be around people and scenarios, right? I don't really want like a skittish dog, because then there could be some problems with that. We've had dogs that we did pick up for like breeding purposes, and we ended up rehoming them because the temperament was, for what I wanted, was a little bit, they were like too like prey driven, and with small kids it's not like the best scenario, and for our lifestyle it just didn't fit. I think in other programs that would be probably something they're looking for, but for in our program it wouldn't it wouldn't fit, just kind of like with the little kids, small kids, you see them and they're just kind of like stalking them, and yeah, and on our side, that doesn't work. We prefer more of like the companion, right? Like my dogs will come out there and they know who's who, and they'll sit in between my legs and walk. Like, hey, where's he going? Who's that? So like that, or with my kids too. They're when they come around, there's other people, and they just jump in front of them, like, hey, I'll go first, right? And most of it is natural, right? And even if they're not gonna bite your head off, or strangers, you're still gonna take one look at Macho, and you're not gonna come inside, right? Or I've had people, they're crossing the street, and then they see the dog, and they just go the other way, and the guy was like, that your dog's doing what it's supposed to do, and I think that's cool, and but then they're still cuddly with my son or my daughters, but um I think that's where we're going, and we want to be able to do that. So if you have a dog and it's a pet home dog, but you can go to a show and get some points, or learn some stuff about the breed. um I think it's probably, I just want a family dog, a good family dog that's sturdy, rugged. That's why I kind of like the American Bulldogs. Man, these guys are ruthless. You could, no matter what, they're just so strong and solid. I've seen them come back from the dead. I've seen, like any other dog, there's no way that dog should not be still here or standing, and they, make some comebacks and do some amazing things. But just a family. In short, to sum it up, I think like a family, healthy, family, pet, guardian, but show quality and athletic abilities, that you could utilize in your day to day, whether it be hiking or running, but or just having fun right in the backyard. I don't want my dogs to get all gassed out all early, and my 3-year old is still trying to play, and these guys are yeah, we don't really want that. We want them to be able to. I want my kids to get tired before the dogs, right? Which is cool, and that's why I like the breed. These guys are resilient. They just keep going. They're a little stubborn, but overall, that's the kind of, when I see them, that's that I want them to be. So when I put the pairings together, that's what I like. Hey, they would be good at this, and this one's a little bit more drivey, and this one's a little bit, maybe a little bit more mellow, right? So we get something kind of even, um, because, and then like placement, right? Because then it might be depending on the family, but I think more overall, we try to make it where the dog is like plug and play for a family or owner. But that's kind of the goals, and I think we've been doing a pretty good job at that. um we've had some ups and downs, but things are going pretty well, and I think the breed is kind of getting some more traction, with like newer generations like myself and some other people that are keeping it alive. But I'm happy where we're at right now.
Talk about, kind of paint us a picture of when you are trying to, you're basing your program off of the picture that it's in your head, what the perfect American Bulldog is. And I know that is subjective, and But when you're trying to breed and when you're looking at pictures and you're daydreaming or what is that dog, uh, the ideal American Bulldog, and what are you trying to accomplish in your yard? Just kind of give us an overview and the ideal height, the weight, and the structure.
Yeah. Man, yeah, that's a hard one. But I think like you say, you're seeing all these pictures and like in all these dogs. Um, man, I think maybe between for the males, I want to say, 100 to maybe right. I think it's good. Um, and probably the height, maybe 21 to 23 inches, right? But just big heads. I like big ears, like when they hang over and they sit like real nice. Long tails. I'm not a fan of like kinks or like shorter tails. I like long tails, long strong tails in the on the dog. Good structure, top line. Like movement. I think it is important, right? The way they the way they move. I don't know. I like it's more, like a nice smooth prance, like you're in the show ring, but still like aggressive, right? But they just move like, man, look at the way, like the turn and the stifle, like everything just flows, but like very like graciously, but in a big frame, right? Sometimes that's hard to picture or put together because sometimes the big dogs are just like real goofy, and which is cool. We have fun with those, but like in a perfect world, right? And just kind of like majestic and in their features. Like real big bone. I like big dogs. Wide with the big chest, and tight skin. Like just real tight skin. Sometimes we get it like when we're playing with size, the skin could get like real loose or droopy. Um, I would like it to be the tight skin on the dog is nice. As far as colors go, I don't. I mean, white dogs, they nice, right? White dogs are cool in the American Bulldog. But we do have some white dogs. We have a lot of brindle dogs. I have some dogs. Some people have a preference. I don't really. I think maybe as far as nose, I like a black nose. But I do have um, two dogs with like a pink nose or like the rust, or what do they call it? Like liver, I think. Um, but as far as color goes, I don't have any preferences. Whatever looks good um, on that dog, but probably lighter dogs. We have some dark brindle dogs, and those are cool too. Um, and just athletic, like a strong bite, um, confidence. It's always nice. You see a big dog, and times they're not as confident, or they're a little like weird, but confidence, and they just go into any situation, and they don't got to be aggressive, but they're just there, and you're like, wow, look at that! Like he didn't bark, he didn't snarl, he's not showing teeth. Um, and I think that to not get too technical, that's kind of where we want to stay and where we want to be, and just consistent, um, to where it's like every time the dog comes out, like what it's gonna be, and there's no like guesswork, right? No question, like I don't know, it could be kind of like this, but it's gonna hit, right? Like some people that have been doing it for a long time, and you could look at that dog and you're like, oh, that's that guys, that's so and so's. Um, to be able to hit. So that would be that where I could just be like, hey, and they see it, I'm like, oh, that's Gabriel, GAM, they produce that dog, right? Just the consistent thing. So we're working on that. We're doing some, line breeding and some inbreeding we've done to kind of, get us that consistent look. And we're getting there. But we want to hit the 100% accuracy, or as close to it as we can. So we're gonna keep putting ourselves and removing stuff, but that's probably if that gives you some kind of picture. I think that's the dog for me. But big dogs, I like big dogs. Um, Muscle. Um, I like big dogs. There's just something about a big dog, right? You can have small dogs, and when they're like, they look ripped or their muscle is more like condensed, right? But then the end of the day, they're small, right? Like a bodybuilder that's like 4 feet, right? He's gonna be like super big because his biceps only have to go this far, opposed to you have somebody that's 6'4". Now that's gonna be if they're jacked, right? That's more to me. That's more impressive because now your biceps this long, right? And you gotta work those muscles, and they're not just all condensed, right? And that's how it would want it to be, just as much muscle as like compact dog, but on a larger frame. And we'll get there. We're on our way, but and still be able to move.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like it would be a little harder. Now that I have a kind of a tall, rangy dog, you could definitely, and he's big, but if I was trying to breed him and keep that girth and build on that, it definitely would seem like it would be a process that would be always evolving.
Yeah, because
You
you
could
give
see
up
how you could,
something and then you give back something.
yeah, yeah, I could
Yeah,
definitely
it's
see
it's
how that,
tough, but
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Um, eh, you know, I've kind of gone so far out of the loop on certain things as far as official standards and stuff because I've been so, I don't know what the right word would be, maybe, uh, thinking so far outside of the box and constraints and maybe outside of the rule box that, or the real rule book that, what is your thoughts on kind of the trend now with the colored American bulldogs, and do you have any dogs that are non-standard colors, and would you have any of those dogs on your yard, and just your overall thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? I did own one. I purchased one, a chocolate American Bulldog. His name was Tank. I'm sure if you might have seen him or people might have seen him on my page. I had him. Um, Man, that dog was ugly when I first got him. Like, but I liked him. He was cute. My fiance, she liked him. He was cute. I was like, I don't know what he's gonna turn into. And I seen like his parents and everything, and it was chocolate. I thought it was like super cool. Um, and rare. Obviously, people like that, right? There's a lot of people that hate it, but there's a lot of people that really like it, especially like outside the dog world. It's just like chocolate. The color is like it's like a like wow factor. Um, and we kept him, and he grew, and he turned out really cool looking. That dude was drivey. He was a great dog, but he was at the end of the day, when I was like thinking about my program and thinking about what I wanted to do, we decided um, that we weren't going to introduce color into this program. Um, there was a time when I said that I did want to do color, and then I started like getting more involved, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna now instead of using this line and the color touching this line, I'm gonna do a separate line," which I mean we all know that's hard enough, right? Doing one is already a task, and now you have two separate things you're trying to build. So I said, all right, we'll do that. And some things didn't go through, and I talked to some people and mentors, and kind of like, hey, what do we think? um just did some research and looked, and at the end of the day, I said, hey, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and remove it. I actually rehomed that dog. He's in Northern California. He's doing great. Um, he's like an older guy with lots of property and just one dog, so it's like the perfection for that dog. Super cool. We invested like a lot of time, a lot of money into that guy. But at the end of the day, it was just best. That was the best move. We bred him once. Um, a stud, another kennel used him. They had some nice bees. They introduced that in there, um, and he looks cool. But at the end of the day, look, I'm all for color. That's if people want to do it. But just for me and in our yard, we're not gonna, we were not gonna use it. But I think it's cool. And there's some nice, color dogs out there, right? Um, and obviously, like Chuck Spencer does some cool stuff with those color dogs. Fuerza American Bulldogs has some, color dogs, and they're cool. They're just, I just them going a different route, but I know there's some people that like hate the color dogs and like will burn you alive for it, and there's some people that are, big advocates for it. But my personal opinion, I don't see any problem with it, and they do produce nice dogs. And I think if you do things the right way, and I mean, it's 2025. All the color drama was a long time ago. I think we're past that, and there's the blood is more pure and it's different, and the breed has evolved so much. Um, and I don't think I don't find any thing wrong with it. Um, and I think it's cool if you have that. It's just not something weird in our program, but there are some cool colored dogs out there. I'm sure you've seen a few that they have some nice looking dogs, flashy paint jobs. But yeah, for us, we did think about it, but in the end of the day, it wasn't color wasn't just a way to go for just a bunch of reasons. Um, and in my head, when I pictured like the American Bulldogs, like I said, when I was looking on WW at 11 years old, those weren't what I saw. So for me, in my head, the vision of that, it's not there for me or for us.
Yeah, that's an interesting take because, growing up, American Bulldogs on the West Coast. I'm older than you, of course. I'm 50 now. American Bulldogs that I knew were didn't look like uh, bulldogs. They look like more like big American Pit Bull Terriers. Um, that's the American Bulldogs I grew up around. They more Scott line looking dogs. Um, but once I started looking, finding that, oh man, there's this different style, the hybrids or the Johnson styles that you would see more in the South or whatever. Um, yeah, I could see how you envision these dogs, and then the color dogs. Once the internet came out, you saw there's these different styles of dogs. I would definitely, if I had American Bulldog program, I would probably want to keep two different lines like that. But then how do you
Yeah.
do that if you don't have unlimited time, space, and money, right? Because I wouldn't want to like. So yeah, I'm right there with you. It's like you either have to focus on all on one or not at all.
Yeah. Everything gets doubled, then it's like double the wait time,
Yeah,
double the everything is just it's a lot, and we considered it, but yeah, yeah, it's just
like I would if I focused all on America. And this is my mindset. This is how I think about things. Uh, and this is how I can relate. Not that because I can't relate firsthand. But um, like if I had color dogs, I think I would probably have an old English bulldog program. That would be my second line. It wouldn't be another American bulldog program. It'd be so I could utilize the colored American bulldogs into my old English bulldog program. That's how I would look at it. That would be my thing. So
yeah. See, and that would work. And you know what? I think with some of the people breeders with um American Bulldogs that are colors, I think they do actually. I feel like there's a few out there they have the color dogs and they have like oldies or like something like that, so they could utilize both, which is probably, if you're gonna go, that would be the way to do it. So it won't take as long.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, because it just it'd be seem like it'd be more in tandem than the other way because you'd just be kind of convoluting like the more standard colors than yeah it just seems like it's more in line with the oldies and the coloreds than it is the coloreds and the standards, even though that's supposedly the same breed. But I think the colored American Bulldogs and the oldies are a little more similar. That's just my uneducated opinion.
Yeah.
probably pissing off some colored American Bulldog breeders, but
Um, yeah, no, I think some people are probably like that's spot on. There's probably some people that are like no, right? But
yeah.
that's the way it goes. We'll never win. Our plate make everybody happy.
And I'm a big fan of
Doesn't
the
go that way.
colored American Bulldogs. You know, I like them. Like I think there's enough room for all healthy, good structured, good temperament dogs, no matter what they are, out of standard, in standard, whatever. You know, it's whoever's preference. You know, and the people behind them is to me the most important thing. Like if the person is a good person and they're building good dogs and they're building a community around their program, that's how I think about what a successful program is. And you know, you know, we could see that people have very successful programs be, by their social media and maybe some of the money that they bring in, but are they good people and are they building good pets? Maybe not in some regards. So, but yeah, that's I think that I think there's a big enough tent for everybody in any style, even if it's not my cup of tea. You know.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that nowadays like that, even they're like, hey, that's not my cup of tea, but I could tell you that's a nice looking dog, or that's
Yeah.
a well put together dog, or he looks cool, right?
Yeah.
It's like I wouldn't personally do that, but I think that dog is badass, right? Or whatever it may be.
So do you work full time?
Yeah, I work probably more than full time, but yeah, I work. I have my regular job. That's my career. I've been doing what I do in the industry for shoot, I don't know, 10 at least 10 years now of the same just in that industry and that career path. So that's what I love, that's my passion, that's what I do, that's what puts food on the tables, that's what pays the bills. And then the dogs are just something extra, that's like a hobby, a passion that we have. um and
Yeah.
it just makes it
Yeah.
fun.
Talk about managing your time and then the passion and just the hard work and effort, but it's the passion that drives you. Uh, the, what is your daily life like? You know, you get up, you take care of your dogs, you go to work. Talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a lot, right? You gotta, enjoy it. You gotta love to do it. Some people want to buy dogs and breed them, and they think it's all easy. Or there's some people like, oh, you make a lot of money doing that. I'm like, dude, I'm just borrowing from myself, just loans for myself. I invest that, and then I get it back in, 6 months to a year. It's not like a get rich quick scheme, but no, basically some of the dogs we have to rotate them, or we keep them on one side or the other, or kennel, we bring them inside. So I'll take off for work, my fiance will either put, if we have some inside, we'll put them out, feed them, make sure they got some water. We'll do our thing, I'll come back home, check on the dogs, um, pick up the poop. We got to pick up poop like every single day. It's not, you go one more extra day, you, man, you're just killing yourself. So just make sure they're good. If we got to rinse the kennels. Saturday and Sunday, that's when we do like the deep cleans, right? Use 10 kinds of soaps and water and squeegees, and we're um, blowing and the broom. So that takes like solid. You got to rack out your day. So if you're like, hey, we got things to do on Saturday or Sunday, then we got to make sure, okay, so I either got to wake up earlier or stay up later and do it at night, or something's got to, or in the middle of whatever, but we need to do that. It's important, right, for their health, and it smells, but to make them comfortable and keep them healthy. But yeah, we'll do that. Usually play with them. We have uh, at our old house, we had a spring pool. I'm sure you've seen that with setup. So we recently moved, and I'm trying to do a new setup for the spring pool. I have a lot of cement now, so less spring pool action. Because these guys will backflip and just drop and won't even think about it. So we have some other tug toys and some flirt poles. We'll play with them for a few minutes. These guys all like water, so the cleaning sometimes it makes it harder because I just want to clean and I got to put them away because they'll just eat the hose all day. I have some videos and stuff like that. But they could play with the water hose for like an hour. And they'll just keep going. Like if it's the first time they've seen water every time, no matter what, which is fun. An easy way to get them, exercised. We also have like a slap meal. So sometimes I'll try to bring them out during the week or the weekends, take some turns on it. Some of them do better than others. Some of them, like it more than others. But we'll do that, for a few minutes, just to keep them going, on walks too, either together or by themselves. Or I mean, you got to walk. If you walk them all every day, it's a lot. So if I could bring a batch like here 3 and then 2, or you go today and you go tomorrow, and slap meal for you today. So it's like a lot of time management. But man, sometimes it's tough, when you get home from work, and then the kids are, greeting you, and they want your attention. And then my older kids have soccer and water polo and swim and work and after school stuff. So it's just a lot, but we manage. And at the end of the day, when it's all good and the dogs are fed and the kennels are clean and the dogs are healthy and everything's taken care of, it's all worth it. It's just the times in between that they get a little hectic, but passion would definitely be the word for it. If you don't have it, or if we didn't have it, um, it just wouldn't work out, because there's no way after you work a 10-hour shift, you're going to come home and do something that you hate, right? I mean, some you may, but and if you do, it's not going to be consistent and you won't do it good and you're going to give it up. Especially this is voluntary. It's not, no one's like, hey, like I could just say give up at any moment, right? But we chose this, and we like it. It's kind of like a family thing where like we're involved. But yeah, and then I'm always on the phone for work. So even like on the weekends I check my phone, or I have guys that are out working, um and I'm working, but uh, it's fun, and my kids see it, and now sometimes they like to do it, but or they want to do it or would help out. So that's kind of cool when they see it or appreciate it. My fiance, she loves them too, and she likes to do dog stuff, but um, they're a little bit messy. So when I'm going in and out with my boots or like the soap, or I'm like, Can you give me a bag? Or I need some more soap. Can you bring this over here?" Or or I'll do some crazy stuff where, like, sometimes I'll bring the trash from the back through the house, and she's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "It's just easier. I got to go back out there, and the dogs are on this side." But it's, or when it's they everybody has good shelter, but then when it rains, and then you're like, all right, we're gonna bring them in and put them here. It's or going on vacation, then it's like, all right, we either have sitters or our kids are going, and there's like, now we need dog sitters. Who's gonna come and feed the dogs, or who's gonna rotate them? Um, and then when they're, if you're breeding and they have puppies, man, I mean, it's easy. It's fine. I enjoy it. The part that gets a little hectic is like that last week, before I just kind of get anxious, like, oh, because like at any moment, like it could be, and they're like panting and pacing and nesting, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to work, and you're just like waiting for the text. Are you good? She's good. Yeah, maybe tonight. Okay, okay, maybe tomorrow. Maybe I hope it's, and I'm always hoping, like, I hope it's Friday night, because then I can get the dogs done, situated, so I can go to work on Monday, right? But it hasn't, I don't have any wood around. Knock on wood, it hasn't been like where it's a crazy time. But when my son was born, my dog was pregnant, Daisy, and she had litter that like same week, and then my son was born. So we were like at the hospital. Well, I was whelping puppies, and then we were at the hospital. My son was being born, and I was just telling the nurses like, "Hey, can we not? The minimal time here is please, because we want to get home, and we have puppies." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." So it gets hectic, and they're there, and I'm coming home with a with my son, and then there's a whole litter of puppies, and it's just crazy. But my daughters will help, or I'm like, "Hey, I I'm at work, but when I come out, I'll pick you up and I need you to hold the dogs and we're gonna take pictures. And and then I'm yelling at them like, no, not like that, because I know what I want to see and I know like the pictures of what they should look like. And this is like every day in between soccer and work and school, and there's always like something going on. Um, but we make it happen and it's fun. But my fiance too, she came home one time from work and Daisy started having puppies. She delivered the first one. I was in the meeting and I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, oh shoot, she's like, it's time. They're having puppies. So I come home and then people at work are like, what? Like, what do you mean? I was like, look it, I have my phone, just call me. They're like, nobody understands. It's kind of weird. You're like, oh, my dog is having puppies. It's not really something a lot of people say, at work, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm having, my dog's having puppies. So, we'll come and do our thing. I had to miss um my cousin's one of my cousins weddings because the puppies were being born, like it was late, like at 1 in the morning or like 3 in the morning, and they went like every 2 hours, 8 puppies, boom, 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 boom. So I had to tell him like, hey, I can't. There's no way I could go to this. And sometimes you miss out on things. I missed out on one of my good friends, a bachelor party. Same thing. It was a first litter. These puppies like were just born. I was like, I can't leave. You know. Now we know what to do and stuff. Or I could be like, hey, we're gonna do this, and my fiance, she could help, or my kids too. I'm like, they know what the puppies should look like or should be doing. But that was like our first one, and I was like, dude, there's no way I could go. Like, I'm not even sure. Like, this is my first time. I've never really had this. So I don't really feel comfortable. And I'm not going to leave her with all the kids and these 8 puppies right here. But we make it work. That's, every day, feed them, water, pick up poop, do some exercise, spend some time with them. Um, Bathing is crazy when you got to bathe them. Um, and then, like, just planning stuff. Like, we've gone to shows. Um, and loading them up in the car and bathing them the night before and then getting them cleaned the day of and then loading them up, taking them to the show, doing our thing, coming back, unloading them, and just to be like, okay, cool. Now we have dinner at 7, or we have a family party at at 8 or something. But it's kind of crazy. But I wouldn't change it. And it's definitely something that we enjoy, and I hope I never, lose it. But in that, I'm kind of living the dream for that, because that's something I always wanted to do, is have a bunch of dogs and animals. When I was little, I used to bring, I think I had an iguana, birds, snake, mice, hamsters, fish. I had like a 250-gallon fish tank in my bedroom as a teenager. It was crazy. And then I just had a bunch of different, I went on a little thing about fish, but animals, I've always been cool and like, fascinated me. So I like that. My kids kind of have that. So it's fun, like a thing for everybody, and we still get through the our day to day, right?
Well, there's so many life lessons too for your kids, even if maybe they're not like super passionate right now. Maybe 10 years when they're adults, they'll look back and say, wow, there's a lot of things that they learned from that, watching you and in your passion, and that there's, you know, things that are bigger than they are, and there's responsibilities, and who knows, they may, eventually, you know, take that responsibility on and build on your program themselves, or or do something similar, or
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Or they take
be a
those life
vet maybe.
yeah. Yeah, they take those life lessons and they do something else with that. Yeah, exactly. Be a vet. Um,
Yeah, just the hard work, like you said,
yeah,
life lessons. I think you're
yeah.
right.
Yeah, there's so many positives, I think, with that sort of thing, and just having a passion too. Like, one of the things that is always been in my mind lately, is I live my life in such a weird way. Like, I looked at my self-worth of what I was doing in my career, and my job title, and that, I was only as good as what my job title was, and what I did for a living, and how well I was doing there. And I thought hobbies and passions were futile. But in reality, I think I was wrong completely, and I think having passion outside of that part of your life is so important, and it makes you a better person all around. And and dogs, it could be anything, but um, uh, uh, and that's such a good lesson for kids to have, like that you need to have that passion in your life, because it does create so many uh, positive side effects, because you're more empathetic. You create a build upon a work ethic. All these other things that you're with like you talked about. You have to learn time management. You got to learn how to, some days that you may not feel like doing it, but you have to. So you have to kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, kind of thing, and yeah, all of that stuff. So yeah, no, I get it, and then having that outlet, uh, where maybe you have some stress and anxiety and frustration, but then being able to come home and have that outlet and use that outlet to do what you are passionate about, to me is so important in life. And yeah, all all of those things. It's good for us, and it's good to see. It's good for kids to see that.
Oh heck yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Um, so talk about the diet that you feed your dogs, and what's the philosophy behind that?
So for the dogs, we do kibble and we do raw, right? We do feed them raw mixed. We maybe 2 to 3 times a week. But like ground beef, chicken, things like that, or like steak. Um, I like it. Um, we've had good luck with it. The kibble, we've bounced around with a few different kibbles, but do still feed dry food, and we just add the raw to it. The dogs love it. I've posted videos and stuff like on YouTube before, like on Instagram, and some people lose their minds that you're feeding them that. And something that people, the misconception is that they'll choke on chicken bones, but it's if they're cooked right, because if the bones are cooked, then when they you snap them, they splinter. But if they're like all chicken, they don't splinter, they just break, right, and they can eat them and stomach will do the rest. um but yeah, people were just coming for me in these videos, like messaging me like, oh my god, you're gonna kill them. And I had a litter of puppies, and I had them in a kennel, and I hung like a whole chicken, and like from the middle of the kennel, and all the dogs were just going at it, and people were losing their mind. Oh my gosh, you're a sick person, and they're gonna get sick. But man, it's good for them. It's natural. And the kibble's good too. But I'm raw is it's good to just have. But I think it mixed in there. I think it's really good, and we've had good luck. Um, and if you get like a good quality food, we do with like something that has like high protein. Um, their poops are, they don't poop as much, right? And it's not as messy. So when you have a few dogs, those are kind of things you look at. Um, it's kind of weird, but you check them and you make sure, hey, everything's good, and you see that. But raw diet, raw and kibble is something that's good for us, and we like it. And sometimes it's cheaper, um, and you could buy it in bulk. And the dogs, they enjoy it, and it's kind of a fun way to keep them engaged too. Even though they get just as happy for the kibble, but they know the raw food, and they know when that meat is coming. And it's a treat for them, but it's also keeping them healthy, and it's good for their digestive. But raw and kibble is the way to go. I think there's some toppers, but if we do, we'll do like ground beef with our food. It's kind of messy sometimes, right? You got to keep it clean and all that. And then when you're feeding multiple dogs raw, then it's like, but they're good, and they know. But we like the raw food. But like I said, the first time people started seeing that, they were, or what is that when they say bloodthirsty, right? Like once they taste the blood, then they like want it. I'm like, they're not vampires or whatever. But that, I guess that's a real, I don't know if you heard that. Have you heard that? Like a misconception of that, like about they get bloodthirsty or something?
Yeah, I've heard that before, but people are so crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
unbelievable. These are animals, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I'm like,
They
yeah,
I
they
mean,
animals, exactly.
they'd be shocked what they would do to a squirrel if you let them. I mean, what your little
Exactly.
what my little Shih Tzu might do to a squirrel, they'd be shocked.
Yeah, they'll say, "Oh, see, because she had red meat before, so now she's a killer." Yeah.
Yeah, animals. Animals kill things. I mean, they may not be able to, but they want to. In some cases, like my friend, she wants to kill wanted to kill our neighbor's German Shepherd, but he couldn't, but he
Yeah, but
wanted to.
yeah, that doesn't mean he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, yeah, people are nuts.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny.
uh, so talk about your current setup in this is another thing that's been really interesting to me because I'm starting to think brainstorm what I'm gonna if I'm gonna stay in this house or not. We just moved here, so I'm gonna be here for a couple more years anyway, just to build up equity or anything. Um, but are you thinking about building upon your art now, and what is your incremental goals? What are you thinking about as far as housing and your kennel setup and all that. It may this may be like a something nobody cares about, but for I don't care. It interests me, and I love to hear it from people.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we have a good setup, right? But probably the main goal when everything is said and done would be we would have to move somewhere probably a little bit further, maybe a little bit more rural with more land, right? Something like larger. I got a buddy, he's there like in Hesperia, um, Dennis, Regard Bulls. That's my dude right there, and he's always like, "See, when are you gonna come down? Are you ready? Like, look at this property, or this will be perfect for the dogs, or check this out." And that probably will end up doing something like that where it has to be a little bit further out. Some of the kids with school and stuff, we just got to make sure it's like at the right moment. But yeah, that would be the ultimate goal, and have obviously this amazing kennel setup and a whole side for them. And I've watched, it's funny that you said that some people don't care, but I've watched people like and their journey, like they already breed dogs and they move and they start and they build like this whole dog thing. I'm like, oh my God, I remember it was like nothing. You had dirt back there, and now it's like an elite setup. So we would like something like that, right, where these guys could run. The way the property set up now is, um they're like on both sides. So I have three dogs over here and on one side of the house, and then I have two dogs on the other side of the house. Um, they could all be together, but one of my dogs, the females, she's more like relaxed. She's not an old dog. She's a little bit older, but she's just more like relaxed and mature. She doesn't really play those games. And the other dogs, three of them, they're just maniacs, right? They want to have fun. Everything's just go, 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 and they're crazy. She doesn't like to participate in that. So she's real, so I keep her on the other side. Um, she's a little bit more civilized. So she'll come in, but I keep her on that side, with her, technically it's like her half, what would it be? Like her nephew. Yeah, so like with her nephew, right? She's on the side with him. Um, and they're a little bit more chill, so they do better together. And then we have the other three dogs are a little bit more rambunctious on that side, right? And they do well. So they have from one side of the house to the other. Then we have a gate. Then these guys are on one side of the house to the other. Then we have another gate. And then I did like put an extra gate just for kind of like an area if I wanted to have people, I could keep them It's not actual kennel, but more of like a dog run. So where I could keep one or two dogs there for, maybe a birthday party or something if we needed to, or someone needed to come. Um, and then we have two crates inside, and they're usually for those dogs. They'll come in at night, or go back, or we have them. I I'm a firm believer in crates. I didn't really know about them until a few years ago. And a buddy of mine, his name is Gabriel as well. Paul Corey dog training. Um, Shout out to that. He just kind of, was training the dogs and doing stuff and with the crates and like crate and train them and keep them out. And then the more dogs you get, right? Sometimes you do have to, crate them. So we just did that, and then we were able to, crate them. They like to come in at night. Our old house, we had all five sleep at night, right? But yeah, my fiance say, you know what, that's enough. These guys cannot be sleeping here. And it kind of it doesn't look as nice, right? You have all these crates. For me, I'm like, hey, we have dogs, but um, the aesthetics isn't really working. So we just have two, and they come in and out. Um, but we just move everybody around, but we have good, a good size on the property that everybody is comfortable. If I got another dog, that would be pushing it. But what we have now is a good setup, and most of them, they're always together. And then we just kind of move them if there's the heat, or sometimes with multiple dogs, if maybe they're they do get into it, right, from time to time. And some puppies, they might be good now, but then this dog now that was 6 months is now 12 months, and now he's not gonna take the dominance or wants to assert himself. Or we have a female in heat, and these guys start losing their minds, right? Or one female's in heat and the other one isn't, and she wants to beat everybody up, which is natural, right? I think sometimes people, not that they don't talk about it, or maybe yeah, they don't talk about it, or they kind of don't say that that's part of it, but that scuffles and little stuff is part of it, especially in your multi-dog home. I'm sure you can say that with your dogs, like, hey, nothing's, they don't hate each other, just sometimes like, hey man, what, you pissed them off, and that's what happened. But so crates, we have them, and we move them around, and we utilize the garage for some stuff. But ideally, yeah, I would want a couple acres, with well, like just some kind of elite dog setup with spring poles and mills and just a bunch of stuff, for the dogs. But right now we make it work. But yeah, that's the ultimate goal, is to have just something on the property like separate, right? Like this is our backyard and this is the dog's backyard. But that'll happen eventually, in a few years. But we're more in like a city now, um, so we don't have that much property, but it works.
So in the next 5, 10 years, where do you see your program, and what are you hoping to accomplish?
Ah, man, that's in the 5, 10 years. I would hope that, um, kind of put down some, some like legacy, or some kind of something like a staple, or hit something, or produce a dog or multiple dogs to where it's like, like other dogs that we talk about now, right? Or like breeders that have been doing it. Um, like I did a show, right? And I remember when I was younger, like I would see like Bybee, Randy Bybee, right? We did a show. Um, I competed against him in multiple shows, and then he was a judge, and then I won, and he gave me my ribbon. And to me, I was like, oh, holy cow, like, dude, that guy, I used to, see that guy, and he had dogs. He was already, obviously established. I'm 36. He's, older than me, and he's been doing it for a long time. So to me, that was kind of like, hey, this is, like I'm doing it. I'm here with the people that, I saw and been doing it, much longer, than I have. Um, I mean, I was a kid, right, when they were doing their thing. Um, and so maybe, something like that, or like, this is, cool. This is, an awesome thing to be doing, right? So like this, maybe, I don't know. There's people who still have, dog books, but that would be kind of cool to get, to make some dogs that are go down and, you know, history, like, oh yeah, this dog, or they talk about it, or remember this dog, and kind of to have at least one of those dogs, to where people could, in the future, they're still doing dogs in 20 years, be like, oh yeah, there's nothing like this dog, right? Remember that GAM's dog, whatever it was. Here's a picture of it. And how people do now, right, on Facebook, and talk about dogs that, from the past, or that have been gone for 20 years or still. I see some black and white photos, people posting dogs like, oh, this was from 19 whatever, and it's like that's cool, right? And people are still talking about that dog. So I think that's what I would kind of just to be able to maybe do some stuff that would kind of cement our kennel and name and kind of like the history of dogs, so to say, to be a part of that or something, to where they could bring it up, later in the future and just help, the dog community and learn and meet people and, just bring good light to it. But I think that's what I would and kind of push it forward, like with this, like with the podcasts, um, and some shows and like marketing and media, just to bring some good light. There's a lot of like bad negative stuff, that comes as, or I'm sure some readers or you've seen some stuff online and you're like, oh man, that's horrible, or it gives people like a bad rep, right? But not everybody's doing bad stuff or bad business. So just something to kind of make like a staple in the dog community for years to come.
Yeah, for sure. Um, you talked earlier in the when we first started. If you did have all the money and time in the world and all the space and all that, what would be your second breed?
I would definitely have like a canary dog, like a Prisa Canario. Um, that's always been like a dog for me that I really like and enjoy. I think man, they're just badass, and I've seen some cool ones. Um, when I was younger growing up, it's not a now they're a little bit more popular again, maybe because I'm more in the dog scene, so I've seen more. But I think that dog for me is probably one of you know the coolest breeds out there, and just badass and ability. They just they look cool and they make it done. They do what they do, and they're just big dogs, impressive. And man, there's some people out there with some good programs, and they're putting them to work, man. And I like that. I just now where I'm at in my life, I don't have, the time or the space, for that kind of dog and with that kind of drive and things like that. But I think that would definitely be one of the dogs that I have. And I think I would also have like maybe some fun dogs um, that I wanted, right? But I just like, hey, now it's like I can't have a Saint Bernard because that's just not gonna work for us. But I think yeah, if I had more time, more money, and bigger property, Saint Bernards are cool, and like bull terriers, like just like a one for the house, just a big and not like there's some cool ones now, but I'm just like, just one that's just chill, just for the egghead, right? Just because, right? You can have it, you have all this time and property, like, hey, I'll have some cool dogs too, just for to add to the collection.
I definitely love Saint Bernards. Everyone I've been around, I've thoroughly enjoyed, and same with bull terriers. So I haven't been around many presses. I've seen a couple up close, but I haven't been around many. Um, uh, they're not very popular, but they're more and more popular. I'm sure, like when you go to shows and stuff, you've probably seen way more than I have.
Yeah, I don't see a lot. They're cool. I've seen some guys like on the East Coast. There's some people out here, and they're starting to do that because they're utilizing them more like working, dogs. Because I think everybody was like, oh, we're gonna do bite work and this and that. So everybody did like the Malinois, right? And so now I think people are like, okay, there's other dogs that do this. Which one can I find? So I feel like a lot of people are like starting to do that, and with the those, and I've seen some people with the what is it called, the alibis.
Mm.
Yeah, some of those, and like I've seen some nice like cane corsos like working, you know, like dogs. So that's pretty cool. They're like different than regular. I think the show dogs look a little different than these dogs, but they're putting in some work, and it's impressive and interesting. If I had some more time, I would want to do some of that.
So, is there anything that we didn't convey this time around? We'll do a round two, but off the top of your head, is there anything that we didn't cover that that you want to get out there?
No, I think this, this was nice. It's a, good format, and I appreciate it. But no, I think, for now, for today, I think that was good. And if, yeah, I'm open and ready to do a second part if you're willing. That would be great.
Yeah, for sure. When I listen to these things again, I always come up with more questions, and then people will listen, and then they'll come up with other questions like, "Why did you ask this?" And I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I will
Around it.
next time,
Yeah.
But that's kind of why I like to, if I like, um, the if it's a good interview or whatever, I like doing part twos and stuff, and like I said, I like your stuff, and it's cool that you guys are doing your thing with the podcast. I really like the idea that more people are starting to realize that it's a cool format. The talk format is really cool, and it can only help if you do it in the right way. And
Yeah.
I think you guys kind of got the right idea about it, and the right temperament. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see some of the guys out there that are doing it, and it's kind of the chest beating stuff that doesn't really doesn't really correlate to better dogs and better community members. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I think,
definitely. That's why I like it because it's cool, like, hey, we can, talk like this. And like you said, it's kind of like balance, right? But man, we wanted to do it for a long time. Dennis was like, come on, let's do it,
yeah,
And I'm like, I'm, shy or whatever, being on camera. And then after, it's like, hey, you know what? Just do it. And then we did it and we figured it out. And it's getting, some good traction, and people are starting to see and, notice. And it's good. I just, it's a place for, everybody. If you want to talk smack, talk smack. If you want to ask questions, there's regular people asking questions or whatever we learned along the way or things that come up, and, be consistent with it. I think it's good. I think it's good for, everybody, and kind of bring people, together, um, with positive stuff, and, have a good time. That we're, we do it together, but like we are separate, our business is separate, our kennels are, separate. That's, Ernest does his thing.
yeah,
Dennis Regardables, he does his thing. Gabriel, GAM, American Bulldogs, I do my thing. And we do that together. But yeah, like, it's for everybody, and, jump
mm,
on and, comment, ask a question or say something funny, whatever it is. It's cool. It's just better for
yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, I agree. It just builds a community, right? It shows
Yeah.
that three guys can come together, three different backgrounds, three different ideas about doing things, and they could come together, have some fun, have some laughs, goof on each other, maybe talk some smack, maybe disagree, agree, whatever. Yeah, I think it just builds a community, and to me, that's where uh, the direction the dog world needs to go more than anything.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, you got it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gabriel.
All right, man. We'll see you soon, Sean.
All right.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.